So I think, for most people, this is probably a pretty sufficient thing, but again, you all have to tune it to yourself. I really like these online cloud services. I think the prices have come down, the technology is good. I'm not endorsing Backblaze. I'm going to let this article tell you why the person that wrote it thinks Backblaze is a pretty good choice now. I do like it personally, although I only have it on a trial basis on my laptop, but I think when my Carbonite one expires, I'm probably going to switch over to these guys. They let you have external drives. They don't throttle the initial upload, and from everything that I've seen, I got Backblaze for free at Roots Tech last year, and I've been using it and trying it on my laptop, and I've been pretty impressed with the service. But again, there's 37 other ones in that article. Read and choose what you think works for you. Again, for all the reasons I talked about, I think having one of these USB or whatever the Apple equivalent connecting to some type of a high storage type device is another good idea. So again, multiple files, multiple locations. The cloud service handles the off-site for me. The USB drive handles the ease and the local files for me. And then I'm perfectly happy using the Windows backup software. And if you're a Mac user, you ought to be even happier with Time Machine. It sounds like it's a really wonderful thing. So for most of us, I think these 3 steps would probably give all of us a pretty good, pretty bulletproof backup strategy for most use. But if you have advanced needs, consider buying one of those network access servers in whatever flavor you want. If iDevices are a big part of your life and you want to back those up, then ramp it up a little bit and get one that supports all that stuff. You decide whether you need the multiple drives and the redundancy and all that. I'm getting to the point where with 130 gig of pictures, I'm getting plenty nervous, and I think this is going to be my next purchase. And if you really do have a ton of files, I think that some of these cloud services like Amazon Cloud Drive or MediaFire are offering really, really attractive pricing for if you really do have a ton of files. And the problem with these things is that I would consider these kind of a tertiary storage site, because getting stuff back down off here is not quick. But it's kind of like having stuff in a vault. So if a lot of things go wrong simultaneously, I would consider this kind of my fallback. I'm not quite to the point of doing that yet, but I'm thinking more and more about it all the time. So again, I've got references for all of the things that I talk about and links to them in the file. The file is available in PDF format right now, and I'll have all this stuff up on the website when I get the presentation put up there. And other than just, again, to encourage you all to please play on the blog with us, each month, get in there and ask some questions before, comment on the stuff that we talked about, help each other learn as we kind of go through the various things that we're talking about. I think it'll make it a lot more enjoyable for us, much more beneficial for everybody, and then particularly for the people who can't be here. So with that, what questions can I try to answer for you? All right, Barb. All right, so the question, just for the benefit of the recording, is when the backup is run either by Windows or by the Macintosh Time Machine, all they back up are the files that you've essentially created. Now, let's take a Windows thing that I'm most familiar with. I bought Microsoft Office, loaded that on the machine, but it is not backing up the Microsoft Office files. It is just backing up the files that I've created using Microsoft Office. So the backups that are created both by Microsoft and by Apple don't back up the native operating system or the things that you've purchased and loaded on the computer since then. Those would all have to be restored. If you had a disk crash, you'd have to restore the PC and then load all those software packages back on again. Okay, so is there any way to back up the operating system and all your programs? Yes, there certainly is. The best way to do that would be to buy one of those third-party software packages I mentioned to you, because those things do that type of service. I'm not even sure that the Windows on the Time Machine would even do that for you. You might be able to go in there and specify it there, but these third-party software packages are optimal at that. And so you could just have essentially a second disk sit in or next to your system that is essentially a mirror image of the one that you're running on. And then that way, if your original system dies, you could just take that other one, install it in the place of it, and you're back up and running again. So could you use one of those portable USB disks to do that? I don't know. You certainly could not take that portable USB device, again, let's take the case of my desktop. If my desktop system crash died, I would not be able to take that USB device and put it in and boot off from it. So you're probably going to have another internal disk drive or some kind of a bootable drive that you could basically swap the bad one out, put the good one in, and get your system back up and running again. Doing that's a little more complicated, obviously, which is why Apple and Windows are not natively doing it for you to be able to have all of that stuff saved for you. Okay, so a portable hard drive comes in many flavors and in many ways of connecting. What I think David is trying to get to is you would have to have almost the type of connector inside your, at least in a Windows machine, that you would use to connect the disk drive to is called a SATA drive, SATA. And there are places on the motherboard where when you install a drive, you connect it to the port right on the motherboard. Now you can also get an external SATA connection. It's a card that you would buy and mount in the PC, kind of like you used to mount modems and things like that. And then you could have an external drive that had a SATA interface. And in that case, you could clone to that drive, and David, you probably could boot off from that one. The type of external drives I've been talking about, the USB connected ones, are connected in a much different manner. And you probably could not boot, well, you definitely could not boot your system up off from an external USB connected drive. So its purpose would just be to be copies of the files. Once you get your system restored, you could copy them back off that external drive onto your system and be up and running again. Well, yeah, you put in, and that's, yes, so you would put the new disk drive in to replace the one that's damaged. You'd have a system recovery disk that, Dell or whoever you bought the system from would have, that should allow you to restore your system to the way it was when you took it out of the box. You'd still have to load, like, Microsoft Office or Ancestry.com or Family Tree Maker or whatever the various software packages. You'd have to load all those on too. But once you had done that, then you could go to your external drive and copy your data files over, and then you'd be back up and running. Right, the attached storage device doesn't help you because your system has to be up and running and have the software on it to even communicate with that device across the network in order for you to even access them. And so all of the, so yeah, it's a chicken and egg thing. You've got to have, the chicken first, which is the computer up and running and talking to the network with the software to talk to the network attached device before you can even access those files. So yeah, restoration of a whole system is not trivial. Okay, so I mentioned it took 3 weeks for Carbonite to back up my system. Yeah, it's a background thing, and it was really pretty benign. I was aware that it was doing it. I was very impatient because I was always checking, are you done? So, but no. Right, with the laptop, it needs to have access to the network in order for Backblaze or Carbonite or whoever to make the backups for you. And so, you can interrupt it, but then, you take months instead of weeks. So, for that initial period when if you have a lot of files, it may take a while for all of them to get uploaded. Now, once that initial copy has been made, it's very quick. So if I change a file, it backs it up almost immediately. If I add new files, those things just zip right up there. But that very initial load when I had, at that time probably only 200, 250 gig, with Carbonite it took a while. But while it's running, it didn't bog the system down. And once it got all that completed, I don't even notice that it's doing anything. It just is very fast. So am I backing up both my laptop and my desktop? No, I pretty much treat my desktop system as my base system, and that's where I make sure that the files exist so they get backed up with the things that I have in place. Everything I have on my laptop, I view just as a copy. So I do very little original work on here, but when I do, I make sure I get it on my desktop system very quickly and take advantage of Dropbox and flash drives and things like that so that it's, while it's kind of in process, I don't lose it. But no, I don't intend. I've got a free backup from Backblaze because I just got a free year subscription, so I am backing the system up. Once that expires, it's not my intention to continue backing up my laptop. That's just me. If you're not, for you, that may not be something you'd be comfortable with. That's why I say everybody's doing it. If you only have a laptop, then yeah, when you do your initial subscription to a service, you're going to have to make sure it's connected to the network long enough to get all of the files backed up there. Okay, so you can do it either, wired or a wireless connection. I think you'll probably get a little better throughput with a wired connection, just because the wireless stuff, sometimes you tend to have interference and things like that. So yeah, if I were doing, backing up a laptop with a lot of files, I would definitely leave it powered up, connected to the internet with the cable for as long as it took to get all of that done. And then from there, unless you're just downloading massive amounts of files, I don't think it would have any trouble keeping up with it with your wireless connection. Yeah, so for, if you've got a NAS, I would very definitely have it hardwired. And that's pretty easy to do. As I showed you, most of the devices that you get from providers today have multiple connections on your point of presence, wherever that is. And so if you've got that situated like I do, it was pretty easy to put the NAS next to it, just connect it to there, hook it up on the same UPS power supply, and that kind of keeps things going. Now, as far as the capabilities, you can be fairly simple to just being, one drive and, kind of a dumb network attached thing, all the way through multiple drives. I mentioned the ability to have some connections to your iDevices, and so you can do the whole gauntlet from very simple, very affordable to not so simple and not so affordable in terms of capabilities. I mean, yes, you can have mirrors, and by mirror you'd basically say I've got two physical drives in there, and what happens is the device has the ability to take the files and just write it to both drives identically. And in theory, if one of those drives should break, as long as your NAS technology supports this, you ought to be able to take that defective drive out, replace it, and it ought to copy the files back over there for you automatically and seamlessly. So with two drives, mirroring is just like it sounds. This disk and this disk are identical. Lose either one and I've got all my data. You can go beyond that to something called a RAID drive, I believe. And with that you can have more than two drives. You can have very many. And then they're not just mirroring it, they're taking the data and they're duplicating it across many of the drives. Again, such that if I lose one drive, I don't even lose access to the files because I've got another copy elsewhere across these multiple systems. And again, the intention would be you could just take that defective single disk drive out, replace it, and the system would recover all of the files for you. Now, I've had bad experiences personally with Netgear mirroring devices where I've had two occasions now with two different devices where the mirror broke. And so when that happens, you basically, at least with the Netgear, and this is specifically to them, I basically lost all the data on one drive and I was down to one drive again. And so having it mirrored really didn't help me a lot ever. I've got a lot more hope for some of these newer ones with this RAID type technology where they're spreading it across more than two drives, and I have a lot more faith in some of the other providers than I do in Netgear to be able to make a product that works the way that it's supposed to. So as you can tell, I'm not real happy with my experiences with Netgear. I would never buy them again. The other ones look pretty good. From what I'm reading, it seems like the technology is a lot better, implemented, a lot more mature, and I have a lot more hope that it's going to work. Does that address your questions?
Well, I think it does.
Okay, well, so yes, what you would basically be doing is, in your desire to have kind of removed a piece of the media, I don't know if I would use a RAID or use a NAS that way, because it's not really how it's intended to work. Because I just would be real hesitant to abuse one that way. Yeah, I don't mean abuse it.
Well, what would be the best way then to create an extra copy, if you will, to set aside? Since you've got an extra mirrored copy there in the NAS anyway.
Yeah, but it's kind of an internal mirror thing. It's really meant, it's for its use if something bad happens internally, not necessarily your use to come in and take one out and say, okay, I'm going to have my offsite backup now in this thing that I'm going to periodically take out of there.
Well, I'm doing that in my desktop now. I've had a mirrored drive in there for years.
Okay.
But I don't have it in a set-aside separate container. Or
Okay, so for the rest of you, remember when I was saying you could do time, money, or technical know-how? We're talking the technical know-how now, because you're a little more comfortable with the idea of swapping disks and things and around than many people might be. I would be tempted, since these NAS drives are relatively inexpensive, I'd be tempted just to go with a second one of those and periodically copy files from my primary one over to that one and then take that one and put it in a safe place, rather than messing around with internal drives in the NASs. NASs, is that even a word? Again, the cost is so low, and that way you've kind of got the integrity of the manufacturer and everything with the product working the way it's designed, which is copying a lot of files. And I'd feel a lot more comfortable doing that than swapping drives out of a NAS. That's just me, though. Because certainly if you get into one of these multiple drive things, getting one drive out doesn't have everything. They've got stuff spread out over multiple files. So what you're talking about would only work if you truly were in a mirrored situation where this drive was always an exact copy of that one. You start throwing a third drive in there and you can't do that anymore. So I would be cautious. I'm not, well, I think I've said enough about that. How about the side of the room? Anybody awake over here? I think we're done. Thank you all very much and appreciate you being here tonight. We'll see you in the blog, right? Yeah. Yay. Thank you all.